I'm Luca Corradi. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of the Net Zero Technology Centre in Scotland. And we are a non-for-profit organization with a vision for a net zero world powered by technology innovation. We work with academia, with government, and with industry to accelerate the transition to a net zero world. And we are launching today an international collaboration, Technology Without Border, aiming at closing the technology gap between the global north and the global south. And there's a white paper that we're publishing today and a web page. And later in the presentation, you have a QR code so you can download it and access. And this is a step, and if I can get to the next slide, please. This is the latest step on a journey, and a journey that we started at COP26 in Glasgow on our doorstep. At that time, the Net Zero Technology Centre published an integrated energy vision to show how an oil and gas basin like the North Sea, the UK continental shelf in the North Sea, could become a net zero energy center, a net zero energy region over 2030, 2040, showing the path. And that was our view of the world from our shore. But soon we started thinking, okay, this is based on our point of view, on our specificity, on what we think we can do here. What is the view from the other side of the North Sea, which is one basin of water after all? And so we engage with TNO in the Netherlands, which is a center similar to ours, and we start comparing notes. And then from there, we went on, and we went to expand that research, and we call COP26 an international summit of technology centers from Australia, Canada, US, Japan, and other regions, Brazil. And during the 3 days of summit at COP26, we identified many similarities about the approach to go to net zero, but we also spot some differences. And I think that's where we learned how important local context is and how important is engagement with local industry. We were hoping to find a lot of similarity, which we did, to work together on the same challenge. But I think the big learning was, well, there are differences, nuances, and this is based on the local context. And so when we think about bridging the gap between the global north and the global south, and we think about technology transfer, we need to start from there. We need to start from the local context. What are the key problems? What are the big emission sources? And also, what are the technology gaps in that region or that country? And also, what are the local skills? Because there isn't a blank sheet when it comes to energy or industrial. Every country has a starting position. And so there are skills, there are capabilities there that can be leveraged to make that transition to net zero. And that is a key element to enable that technology transfer, which is not just transfer. It's local co-development, it's adaptation, it's demonstration, it's deployment, and it is then continuous innovation. We need to remember that the technology we're dealing with, the net zero technology, are still in the early stages. There's a lot to be innovated, and that can be done in partnership locally. Because in a way, this is how we started at the Net Zero Technology Centre 7 years ago in Scotland, and we've been able to bring together public money from Scottish government and UK government and leverage then industry money to develop and deploy technologies for net zero, and leveraging what was already there, which is an industrial ecosystem based on the oil and gas industry. And that industrial ecosystem, that level of skills, university, academia, financial, entrepreneurship ecosystem is what enabled us to have a very good result in these 7 years in the North Sea. And it is enabling a just transition. It is helping creating jobs or protecting jobs from the transition. And it's also creating potential for export. So it's building that local context and transforming that into the new normal. So imagine if we can then replicate that approach of leveraging one by one money from the public government with the private government in the global south. And that means working with the local actors, with local industry, with local technology center, with local supply chain. And this, in essence, is the spirit and the approach of Technology Without Borders. And, to get to the next slide, the people and the organization on the ground know that better than anybody else from the outside. They know the local context, and the presentation and the panel that was here before was also stressing that concept from a totally different point of view, from a loss and damage perspective, but it was the same element. You need to work with the local communities. And so our model starts from there, from the place element on the slide, which is working together, which is getting the priorities and the challenges from the cluster, from the country, from the destination region of this collaboration. And then that means leveraging the coalition. So we come to this as a coalition of technology centers from CSIRO in Australia, CSR in South Africa, TNO in the Netherlands, as I mentioned, AIST in Japan, and I'm sure I'm missing at least one, but it is there on the slide. And that body of knowledge, that spread and breadth of technology knowledge can then be brought to bear, can be leveraged collaborative with the local technology center in making that happen, in not only transferring technology, but is co-developing technology, as I said before. And we, as I said before, I think we need to remember that a lot of technologies are available today, but for achieving net zero, still 1/3 of the technology that we need by 2050 is still at pilot stage or prototype stage. So, and also, the one we have already has always been designed with the global north requirements in mind. It didn't start from the global south. So there's a lot of work that can be done, not only to transfer, but to co-develop, as I said. And so technology without borders, with the creation, and I can get to the next slide, please, with the creation of the concept of a global technology innovation hub, is designed to maximize what's in the local context already and to take advantage of a global collaboration to create a new local context out of it. And just like the oil and gas supply chain and the value chain and the industry in Scotland is rapidly becoming a net zero technology supply chain. So again, it started from what is there, building on what is there, leveraging the skills, complementing, augmenting capacity, and making that happen together. And so think how good it could be if we can leverage this global wave of knowledge and technologies and this network of developers and startups that ourselves at the Net Zero Technology Center, but our technology partners as well, have developed with us in these years, and match them quickly with a specific requirement of place and build local capacity and integrating the specific local strengths, skills, knowledge of the local people. So this is a technology without border in 5 minutes as an introduction. And I now look forward to have an engaging discussion with the panel. Let me introduce the panel first. I'm very pleased to have Crispian Oliver, who is Executive Director of the South African Presidential Climate Commission. Ali Al-Rawai, Senior Vice President, Technology and Innovation of ADNOC. Dr. Steve Griffith, Senior Vice President for Research and Development at Khalifa University of Science and Technology in Abu Dhabi. Our own Myrtle Dawes, Chief Executive Officer of the Net Zero Technology Center. And thank Ruben Ackend, CEO of the Scottish Development International. Thank you very much for being here. And if I can start maybe with you, Crispian. I'm very pleased to have you here today. And you've been in this fight against climate change for many, many years. And I'd like to ask, what is your perspective from South Africa? You've been involved with many of the existing projects, and do you see technology without border can be something different?
Thank you, Luca, and a very good afternoon, everyone. Really a pleasure to be here, and very exciting developments around technology without borders. So I actually did a visit up to Aberdeen and met with the Net Zero Technology Center, and I was really fascinated by the North Sea example. Because you've got an deeply embedded fossil fuel industry that has embraced the idea of net zero and is exploring the full range of technologies that will allow us to get us there. And it's not exactly comparable to South Africa. So we've got a coal industry. We've got one of the biggest coal fields in the world. And we have a highly developed mining industry. I mean, we know how to take rocks out of the ground and turn them into usable minerals and process them. And the one thing that the fossil fuel industry has in large abundance. It's the ability to get things done. They think in very practical terms, and they have a can-do approach. And when they apply their mind to something, they usually do it. So, you know, this process of bringing the fossil fuel industry into the net zero debate and getting them to sign up to it is a critically important process for us. We've got a couple of resources that we can deploy on this transition. I mean, we have incredible wind and solar resources. We've got minerals for the future green economy. So a long list of critical minerals. And if we don't have them, the countries immediately to the north of us do. And we've got, you know, mining, geological engineering, artisanal skills in large abundance, as well as a set of highly developed capital markets. So, you know, Johannesburg is the financial center for sub-Saharan Africa, and we power a lot of the transitions that you're seeing taking place across Southern African countries. Where we are really weak is in terms of the technology development and innovation side. So, you know, our private sectors, I think, locked into traditional ways of making a return. So they do what they know well, and they're risk averse, and they're struggling to see the opportunity that exists within the energy transition. I mean, that's shifting. But our innovation system, so moving from research into innovation, into early stage commercialization, needs an enormous amount of hand-holding and development as we move forward. So I'm very taken with the work you do at the Net Zero Technology Center, and more broadly, the thinking around technology without borders. You know, how do you take an initial public sector endowment and leverage it up to achieve scale in this area? How do you link up throughout the production process with private innovators and private investors so that they're along for the journey as you go forward? How do you bring academic institutions into the picture? We've got some great universities, but a lot of them aren't, you know, plugging into the innovation and commercialization stages of the process. So, you know, I like the idea that you're putting forward of a co-development approach. So we'll discuss further as we go through the panel.
Thank you. Thank you, Crispin. That's a very good point there. And if I can move to Ali, if you don't mind, because we mentioned, of course, how we work with industry, you know, and the importance of industry match funding, the importance of industry co-development and building on the existing. So from your perspective, would you like to comment on the initiative and what you see the role of private industry into this?
It's not. Look, we are a national oil company, so not really a private. So as a national oil companies like an ADNOC, maybe let me just go ahead and introduce a bit two events prior talking about some certain examples here. Being in the TechX as technology accelerator programs with the Net Zero Technology Center as an example, this has given us an opportunity as a company, as an ADNOC, to go ahead and see exactly what the other are doing, especially the small companies that they can go ahead and accelerate our net zero technologies within UAE or in ADNOC in particular. We are really proud as an ADNOC, as a national oil company, to be a strategic partner first in the region, along with Equinor and BP. During this event or during this activities with the TechX, we managed actually to deploy almost two technologies. One of them is this Transergios. It's a very clean energies where we can go ahead and actually monitor the CO2 using the earth vibration. So it's very unique. It's very kind of a technology that it will help us to ensure that we are going to keep the CO2 underground. The second thing is just yesterday about the Decarbonization Technology Challenge. Also, we launched it in May during the UAE Climate Tech, where more than 650 applicants across 50 countries, from 7 continents almost. So now, yesterday, we've had a technology pitch battle in the green zones, and we've awarded one technology about the batteries, about the flying wheel, RevTerra. And we are planning to go ahead and pilot these technologies early next year. So these two events actually, that help us actually to go ahead and even expand and went beyond. So from ADNOC perspective as a national oil company, I believe that net zeros, it cannot be achieved unless all industries, talking about national, international, and even private sectors, to work together to achieve such a target. It will not really depend on a company, a country, or an individual to meet such a target. We need to ensure that we are all collectively working together. Like this event as an example, it's very obvious that we need to get all together to ensure that, to agree how we can go ahead and achieve such very ambitious target, which is exactly net zeros. Energy demand is rising. You're talking about 7 to 8% between now until 2030, and a longer term by 2050, you're talking about 20% energy increase, while we are exactly growing here. So the country will require still more energy. So we need to ensure that we are going to provide the world with the cleaner energy. So this is exactly what we are doing in ADNOC. And we are also proud to say that we are the first company among our peers to bring forward the net zeros target 5 years ahead. The initial plan was 250, but nowadays we are talking about 245 as a net zeros. We also committed about methane emissions. So we're going to reach near zero methane by 2030. So all these targets, it's very committed, very aggressive, to ensure that we are going to deploy the right technology to ensure that we are going to meet all these targets. We are leveraging technologies. One of the good technologies that maybe it's really worth also to mention here is about mangroves. We are in ADNOC, we are planting mangroves. So far, we planted more than 2.5 million trees so far, and we are leveraging technologies through drones to plant these mangroves. And by 2030, we have a very clear target to plant more than 10 million mangroves trees. Not only that, but also we are one of the leading companies once it's come to the capturing the CO2 through Al-Riyada from one of the hard to abate sector, which is exactly steel. We managed to operationalize one of the high commercial scale plants, which is Al-Riyada, to capture the CO2 for the utilization. Finally, maybe it's really to conclude, 100% of the supplied energy through the grids are clean. We're getting all the grid powers through clean power, talking about the solar as well as the nuclear. So for us as an ADNOC, we're going to continue supplying energy demands for the countries and ensure that we're going to get it at a lower emission.
Thank you, Arjen. You're totally right, that national oil company, but still part of the industrial sector. And thank you also for bringing an important point, which is the brown to green element of decarbonization. It's not just about creating new green energy, it's about also decarbonizing what the emissions that are already there. And this, of course, needs to happen in the global south as in the global north and everywhere else. And Stephen, can I come to you next, please? Stephen, you published papers about technology transfer in the global south, and very good papers. The pleasure to read them. So from your research, how do you think we go beyond deploying imported technology and actually creating true capacity for adopting and using new technologies in the global south?
Sure. Thank you for the question. It's a very interesting topic, and I'm really happy that I can offer some insights as to how we go beyond what I typically talk about as being the focus on technology diffusion, where we build technologies in the north and we assume by just putting them into countries that need new energy sources or what have you, or more energy efficient means of doing their business, they can just adopt them right away and start using them and everything will be fine. What we really want is technology transfer. So there, to me, there's two big differences: technology transfer, technology adoption, and through diffusion. Technology transfer really is about bringing the technologies into a given context, understanding the context, and making sure that in that context, you got the right workforces, you've got the right supply chains, you've got the right understanding of potential social oppositions to technology deployment, all the things that really make a difference. Now, the framework that I think explained this very well, and one that I've done work on in my own research, but also with different national organizations that are looking at technology strategies, is we need to move on beyond what typically you hear about as technology readiness levels, because just having a technology which has been demonstrated in a relevant environment and can now be taken to commercialization in the global north Does not mean that if you take that same technology into a country in, let's say, Africa or Southeast Asia, they may not be able to make that technology work because there are other conditions, other factors to consider. So what we look at is sort of I look at it as a sort of a plot. You look at adoption readiness versus technology readiness. Technology readiness can be very high, but to be able to make a technology move into the market, you need to think about key dimensions which have to be addressed to make that technology successful in a given context. Product market fit is obvious, right? Is there a value proposition for what you're trying to bring to a given context? Does this technology work? That seems fairly straightforward. Market maturity is where there's typically gaps that start to form pretty robustly. Is a market formed for technology in a given environment? What I think we're looking at here, which could be really interesting to address, is resource readiness. You can look at supply chains, you can look at the opportunities and access to finance, project development capabilities. So who's going to build, who's going to operate and make sure this thing works? I mean, in a context essential. And that brings you to workforce. Is there a ready, trained workforce to make this happen? That's essential. And finally, license to operate. And everyone says, oh, the regulator. Yes, we need policies and regulations and these things to think about, but there's a social license to operate. And so every technology is deployed into a socio-technical system where it's not just about technical and economic considerations, there's social and political matters to consider. So will the regimes, whether social or political, in the context you're deploying, allow this technology to succeed? If there's not that context available, you've got to form that. And that's quite essential. So I think in the short, from this opening statement, what we need to do with this initiative is look at where the North, certainly with innovation levels, which are much higher than many countries of the South, can bring ideas of technology, bring new technology, but then we work through this context to make sure those technologies are either modified for context or the surrounding issues that make this technology successful in the context in which it's being deployed. We surmount barriers that come up and catalyze action that way. So I'm very excited. And as you can see, I'm 100% supportive because I like to talk about these particular issues and try and overcome the challenges that are imposed on technology deployment sometimes.
Thank you very much, Steve. And Milton, can I come to you next? I'll just ask your reflection on based on what you heard and what you think, how you think that Technology Without Borders can make a difference based on the comments that we just heard on the panel.
So thanks, Luca. So I think, we arrived into the UAE last week. I think every day has been a school day in terms of how we can apply some of the ideas. But if I just step back to say, our mission at Net Zero Technology Center is around using technology for a net zero future. And all of the work that we do is associated with that. We're very fortunate to have been funded by initially by UK and Scottish government, who continue to provide support. It's no surprise that in the talk before this, we talked about Scottish government and how they were the first to come forward in terms of the grants for loss and damage. Indeed, some of the early investment that's been made, I think, has shown some value. So for us, part of the challenge here is about getting industry sufficiently involved with skin in the game and their resources. And it's not just the money. We need their people involved because they know exactly what some of the problems are and how to implement big stuff. And I've been involved on really big projects, billions, which get executed exactly as planned. That's a precision that we're looking for. But we need to execute it in solve the right problems. And this is where, we need to go right into who actually has the challenge. And I think that's what we do at NZTC. It's about what is the challenge. And some of the things that I'd say is if you look at the metrics which we're judged on, it's about how do we get industry support. And for every pound that government puts in, we're expecting at least £1 from industry as well as some resources. And if you start looking at the monetizable value, so we're talking about the jobs which are created, the companies which go on to commercialize, but also now, because we've got a measure for that, what the CO2 reduction is, you can take £1 from government and multiply that up to 9 in terms of a benefits cost ratio. So for me, it's about making sure that we've got the right funding in place, but that we are solving the right challenges, because that's the only way that people will actually stay to the end and when things don't go right. And that's, so I think for me, the issue about going alongside to support other RTOs who might have who will be on the ground and know exactly what the problems are, and we support them that way and try and, I think, address some of the biggest challenges that we've got in the world.
Thank you. If you can pass the microphone to your right, Myrtle, you mentioned Scotland and the support that we received from the Scottish Government, for which we're thankful. And we have here Ruben from CEO of Scottish Development International. Scotland has a strong commitment on just transition, right? So we were the first to implement the Just Transition Commission, I think, and that is a model that has been exported. So how do you see an initiative like this in the context of a just transition applying in other countries as well, in the countries that maybe you are supporting for your work at Scottish Development International?
Perfect. Thanks so much, Luca. It's a pleasure to be here. So, and such pleasure to be on this panel with such distinguished speakers. As was set out, I'm the CEO of Scottish Development International. So we have folks in 23 countries, about 300 folks looking to support and promote Scotland's agenda. And a critical part of that is the just transition. Just transition, the just bit of that being absolutely fundamental. You talked about our strengths in the North Sea and the oil and gas. We want to go from being the capital of Europe's oil and gas industry to being the capital of its net zero industry. And we want to take others with us on that journey. And this cannot be in a paternalistic way. And I think the points made by Steve were absolutely critical to this. So we use different language. So we don't talk maybe about tech transfer. We talk about partnership. And I think for us, the fundamental underpinning for the way that we are going to work on this is through partnership. And I thought I could bring it to life a little bit with some concrete examples. So I work very closely with businesses and industries. Some of them we support, and we're very proud to support the work of the centre. But if this is a genuine global emergency, global crisis, then we all need to put our shoulder to the wheel. And so what I found is it's been fantastic to work with some of our startup and scale up community in sectors that you wouldn't expect. So Scotland is famous for its history of innovation. You know, everything from the S-bend in your toilet to the first cloned mammal. You know, Scotland was doing that. Floating offshore wind is now maybe a bit more fashionable, but we have this history of innovation. And what I think is absolutely fundamental is working with today's innovators to build their partnerships to make global impact. So if you think about space, the technology, the whole system of space, Scotland puts more small satellites up into space than any other country in Europe. It's not maybe the first thing you think about Scotland. You know, you might be thinking about delicious whiskey or shortbread or tartan, but we do this with satellites. And so we've been working really closely with the space companies to say, there's a global climate emergency. How are we going to work in partnership with the Global South across the world to deliver the technology solutions that we need? And what we're finding through that, through Earth observation, through looking at crop yields, through looking at drought, through looking at flooding with these companies, it only works if it's done in partnership. So it can't be that we've got these brilliant innovations, these brilliant technological solutions, if actually your partners, the countries that you're working with, haven't got the technological kind of skills to absorb that data to be able to tell you what they need. And so what we've found working with those companies is not only have we got to get everyone in behind the global emergency that is climate change, but then we've got to work in partnership to develop the right technological solutions. And that's what we've set about doing as Scottish Development International, is working with our business base to build those partnerships, those trusting relationships that sure lead to big investments, the billions of pounds that were talked about, but also lead to those incremental and game-changing innovations that actually solve the problems that people are facing, not just across the Global South, but across the world. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And you touched a good point there, which is, again, the continuous innovation, and that is something that needs to be done in partnership on local, because it comes from local. So maybe coming back with the microphone, and Myrtle, if you want to comment something about that, on the fact that the technology we have today, not just about applying, it's about constant improving it. And I often compare the net zero technology we have like a Ford Model T. which, it drove America around. They can go anywhere as long as you can repair tires and repair the engine, because the level of affordability and efficiency were not what we have today. So there's a lot of innovation going on, and that is continuous done. And the closer to the problem is, the better. So over the past few years, when we have worked in collaboration with other industry, as I said before, what we found out was, it's not only about the similarity, it's about the nuance, it's about the difference in application. And that is what experience on a daily basis, and at Zero Technology Center working with the local ecosystem.
Yeah. So thanks for that. Yeah, it's one of the big things about who you've got around the table when you're trying to have the challenges, both the person who's got the problem and those who can offer some challenges. And I think that, we commonly hear that we have the technology. Well, we certainly have technology, and that's true. But I say that, I remember when we had car phone technology and we thought that was, and it was very big. So we have had mobile phones for a long time, but they are certainly not the ones that we've got in our pockets today. So for me, this issue about the technological evolution and innovation is very important, as well as pulling the entrepreneurs together in terms of what they're doing. And I'll talk about a Scottish company, Motion, who've been looking at wave energy. Now, there's no reason that we shouldn't have lots of wave energy around the UK. After all, it is an island. And we've really struggled to really harness this. And it's only really by leaning into, okay, you've got your wave device. We know that the waves are chaotic. What else do we need to get in place? Well, you really need subsea storage that needs to be marinized. Who else is doing that? Don't invent that yourself. Let's go with others together and accelerate that technology. So now we have proper wave devices with subsea storage, which is going to be the next project is to be deployed onto a subsea well. So this particular solution will mean that we can then be powering our carbon storage wells using renewable technology, which previously you needed to spend, at least 50 million to put infrastructure down to do that. So really important that we get together. And perhaps the other thing that's really important here is, I haven't seen that one company has the answer to. So getting competitors into the same room is super important. So one of the reasons that we always like to work in coalition is so that we're solving the problem in a more holistic way. And we do ask competitors to work together. Everyone put money in, everyone share the results, because at the moment we are not far enough on the journey to be competing. We do need to collaborate before we compete. And that is the way that we would like to move forward, which is why we're not for profit, because it's very important that it's a safe place for the technology development and innovation and deployment and transfer to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, feel free to comment as you like, but I'm keen to hear what your view is on the role of the UAE, since you're based here. But that's valid for everybody on the panel.
It seems like the microphones are swapping back and forth. So the UAE, obviously this initiative can be done virtually. So I wouldn't say the UAE is naturally going to be the place in which we put the hub, but there are some advantages, and they build on the comments we've heard throughout the panel. In this type of initiative, what you really need is the ability to have a connection between the global north and global south. Since we're all here, we can see that the UAE obviously is keen on doing this, convening the world to try and make the energy transition successful. We are technology agnostic as far as moving forward with either purely clean renewables, which is the context where some countries will have a lot of success. They'll be able to bring renewables in a very aggressive way. Other countries may need to bring in technologies around carbon capture, utilization, and storage. For me, that's perfectly appropriate. That's perfectly fine. As long as we can all agree that there is a net zero trajectory we need to get on. Every country has its own context in which it will operate and will find its own technology pathways. We need to have that voice. And so that's been quite clear from the discussions we're having here today. So as a different kind of global south country, what you have is the opportunity for the UAE to breathe, certainly as a crossroads to the world geographically, but also thinking in a multidimensional way about technology development, technology deployment, and also very keenly looking at the global south. As you've seen the announcements, there's multiple very, multi-billion-dollar funds being established, and almost every time these funds are established, there are billions put, or at least a percentage put toward directly the global south. Now, those funds will be dispersed in many ways, but I think this type of initiative where you're trying to build indigenous capacity certainly makes a lot of sense. And there's not yet, that I've seen, a clear vehicle dedicated to directly that mission. So this could be very supportive of such a thing. Likewise, with the UE, you gotta have to have a country or a location, or if it's a virtual platform, that is somewhat, let's just say, able to partner globally. And we know geopolitics now are getting in the way of the transition, and that's going to cause a problem. So if we can't have countries across the world, Asia, North America, Europe, the Middle East, certain places in Europe, if we all can't work together in a neutral way to find the optimal technology solutions and bring those into the context in which they need to be deployed, we're not going to succeed. So I really believe the UAE's model of how it's going about its business of the energy transition is quite good. My colleague here at ADNOC, we work together all the time. I will, sing the praise of ADNOC, but as a national oil company, I see renewables happening, I see carbon capture happening, I see methane mitigation happening. I see a plan to do so many things which we need to have done. So, I'm not going to call myself biased completely, but I do have a bias toward a country or a region which can make the message work that we need to get the North and the South tied up, and we can do this in a quick, successful way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ali, again, from the point of view of industry and a national oil company, and how that can contribute to this global North and global South connection and technology transfer.
And indeed, maybe let me just give you a couple of examples. The CO2 mineralization, where we are turning the CO2 into a crystal. It's a natural process. As soon as the CO2 will react with certain rocks that is already exist here in UAE as well as in Oman, with the water, it will turn into crystal. So together with the 44.01, it's a small startup based in Oman, where we have these peridotites, these rocks also exist in Oman. We've managed actually to support them and to believe on them to pilot their technology here in UAE, even though that they have abundant of these rocks as well also in Oman. So we managed to help and support such a startup, such a company to go ahead and accelerate and put their technologies in the ground. And maybe it's a good opportunity to go ahead and invite you to visit our plant in Fujairah, where we are capturing the CO2 from the atmosphere, mixing it with seawater and injected deep 1 kilometer in these peridotites with the temperature and pressures. It will help to crystallize and mineralize this one. The natural processes take decades until it will form, but here we're talking about a couple of months, 3 to 4 months, where we can go ahead and eliminate permanently the CO2 from the atmosphere. This is maybe one very good example from a startup as an oil and gas companies, as giant oil and gas company, we helped and support and accelerate their implementation in the ground. Another also good example is Germany, for example. One of the issues that we are facing currently to decarbonize our operations is to have a battery storage. There is too many battery storage actually, but the problem that it cannot suit us because due to the temperatures, it's December and now we look at this, it's very hot. Yeah. So temperatures, humidity, the batteries, the conventional batteries, it will not sustain. You need to have more power to run these batteries. You need to have an HVAC system. So we managed to support one of the startup companies in Germany that they developed the Porsche Taycan powertrains. So we brought them, we said how we can go ahead and work together and accelerate the batteries evolution. So now we've proudly to say that we've managed and developed one of the, let's say, disruptive batteries. We are actually utilizing second life certified batteries from AV. So if you are driving an AV, as soon as you will reach 70% of your batteries performance, you need to exchange it. So we're going to take these batteries because in our system, it can last up to 10 years. So we can go ahead and use it up to 40%. From the life or from the performance of these batteries. Not only that, but also we are actually transferring all the AV experience, the technologies, the one that has already been used in the car, like cooling as an example, liquid cooling on these batteries. These batteries, small in size, that it can provide more than 2 megawatt in power. So this is also another good example that such a technologies can be used anywhere that we've helped actually to support and develop and accelerate. One last thing, actually, just yesterday, we've announced our geothermal project. I believe we managed to kick off the geothermal era in the region, and it can be applied elsewhere once it's come to the cooling. For us, we managed to decarbonize one of the most energy activities here, actually, in the region, and also this is applied in the south as well, that we can go ahead and get the advantage of the hot water to produce cooling. Many people that they are doing it on heating, but also we found a way how we can go ahead and co-building. And this project with one producer and one injector, we managed actually to cool 10% of the Masdar cities by itself. Also, maybe a good opportunity if you have a chance, if you are visiting Masdar city, to come and pass by and see exactly the facilities that we are in ADNOC. We managed to accelerate and put things in the ground. And all these technologies, the three technologies, I just give an example. If it is CO2 mineralization, turning CO2 into a stone, or the batteries, the disruptive battery energy system, as well as the geothermal. All these, it took less than a year from the inception into operational. So all these technologies are already in the ground, and we are piloting it for the future deployments.
Thank you. And I think you gave me three very good reflection point. One is thank you for bringing real examples, because that is fascinating. And of course, when you see technology in action making a difference. But I think three important points. One, with the Oman example is the local entrepreneurship, nurturing and using the local entrepreneur in this technology transfer, which transfer sounds from too, but it's actually, as I said before, a real collaboration that needs to happen. The second point I think you mentioned, because of the collaboration between the UAE and Oman, is that the regional element. We tend to think either as the world as a one, or each country is different. And there are instead clusters where similar challenges might be solved together. So that's another example. And I think the third reflection is speed, because that happened in 1 year. And that, I think, is back to the importance of working with industry, with the local industry, because industry tends to be faster than government in making things happen. And so that's why that much is important. And on that, Crispian, I come back to you. And based on your experience on the existing programs of technology transfer, do you see this potentially being different? What are the good and the bad and the ugly of what is in existence? How this complement that in your view?
Yeah, I mean, fascinating to hear about these examples that you're citing, and it's great to seeing progress. And let me say, we've got a 25-year race to net zero. We have many of the technologies now already mature that we need to win that race, but there's a chunk, 20–30%, that we don't have the technologies yet. And there's, particularly on the outer years of this race, there's a whole degree of uncertainty. So my general approach is to say, treat it like you do a race, have many horses. There's no technology, quite frankly, at this stage that I would exclude. I don't think technologies like carbon capture and storage are going to allow us to continue business as usual. So I don't really see it as a big solution on energy or transport emissions. But I am pretty certain it's going to have a key role as we get to those really hard to abate emissions at the end of this journey. So, I know CCUS gets a little bit of a bad rap from the environmental lobby. They think it's basically an excuse for continuing business as usual. I'm very supportive of it. And South Africa's trying to do, and I've been watching with some admiration what's been going on in the North Sea and in your country with carbon capture. We're busy doing a pilot. We've done a lot of the preliminary studies. We've checked the geology out. We've drilled the cores. We've done the environmental impact assessments. What I've been pushing with the Net Zero Technology Center is, trying to build a partnership so we can learn from what you've been doing in this area. We can tap international best practice and innovation. And as we move into implementation, we can build those kinds of networks and partnerships that allow a technology like this to really succeed.
Thank you. And we're very pleased to work on that and to collaborate on that. And again, thank you for making a reminder there, which is, the 25 years and the clock is ticking. Normal transition we've seen in the past taking 30 to 40 years just to get from 5 to 25% of the market. And that, will be in our white paper if you want to go more in details. But that shows that we don't have that high, and that collaboration is extremely important. And so thank you all the panelists. Is there any question from the public before we draw to the conclusion part of it? No? Okay. Then I think the question then becomes what's next? And if I can go to the next slide, please. As Myrtle said before, Myrtle and I have been here since Friday, and it's been fantastic seeing the program so far. And we're quite optimistic from where this COP is going. It's definitely exceeded expectations so far. I think one thing you attended is also the Business and Philanthropy Forum, and what we heard and learned there about the program, existing collaboration programs, somehow reinforces the value of this approach as an integration to that. Yeah, because this Technology Without Borders is systemic and is program-based, is cluster-based, is not project by project, and therefore it's aimed to reduce that complexity or that bureaucracy and make it faster, also because of the high level of involvement from industry, as we mentioned before. And if I can go to the next slide, again, we think somehow that there is a role for all parties. There's a role for industry. There's a role for government. There's a role for the multilateral development banks, or MDBs, in this. And there's a role for philanthropy as well, to potentially provide that junior capital that allows the pre-bankable project to see the life before the industrial capital, the investment capital comes into place. And so, what we have done, and I think we're still doing, and thanks to Scotland's support and Scottish government support with that in the Net Zero Technology Centre in Scotland, and in leveraging the public money to attract the public, to attract private, to attract industry money and expertise and skills, as Myrtle says. It's not just about the money, it's making that happen, working together the skills. We think this approach can successfully be replicated in the various clusters in the Global South. And let me say once again, this has to start and with a deep involvement of the local knowledge and the local technology centers and the local community. Is not taking two, it's more of working together from both sides on that. And so that's why today we're launching Technology Without Borders. We're launching the white paper that you can download from the web page. The QR code is there on the screen. But this is also a call for action, because we are a coalition of 7 technology centers from around the world. There's still space. We're really hoping more can join. And we hope that industry will join us in this, and we hope that philanthropy and public money as well will find their way. We have it was in the previous slide, but we are starting to draft and designing. We have a pipeline of this project that we want to do together. Crispin, it'd be nice to mention one of those. And so this is a call for action. Join the club. Help us making this a reality, and make this Global North and Global South a faster, more efficient, and more effective reality. And thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for also the people that were following the live streams, and we count on you as well to join in this coalition. And thank you for the panel again. Thank you.